So we've talked about what happens if there's way too much stress and too little recovery in a 24-hour period, waking up in the morning to the following morning waking up, and how you're unlikely to feel particularly refreshed if you wake up when you've only had that much recovery and all that much stress. So what happens when you do that 5 days a week? What's the weekend going to look like? Well, if you've only got that much recovery and that much stress 5 times, multiplied 5 times out, that much recovery is just ending up being less and less able to make a dent. And no matter how much you double or treble that come Saturday and Sunday, when you've got that much versus that much, you're going to have to multiply the recovery an awful lot of times to balance out the stress that you've experienced for the 5 days of the week. So what does that look like slightly longer term? How does the body cope with that in a long-term process? So if I come back to my whiteboard and another graph, so this is now, this time frame could be months to years to even decades. Okay, so everyone's unique and everyone's individual, and I'm going to go through that in a minute. So here, this first dotted line, and in between this dotted line, you remember it from the previous one that I talked about cortisol. The red line was the stressor hormone, the activity hormone, fight or flight, get up and get it done hormone. Well, in a normal 24-hour period, you would probably stay within there. Okay? So I'm going to use my orange pen to represent that. So what you might find is for quite a long time, those cortisol productions, and each little peak here is a day, stays well within these normal levels. And maybe, I don't know, you go on a stag do, and it goes up a bit, but if it only goes up a little bit, it'll come back down, because you're only on a stag do for a weekend or you know, whatever. That's too much alcohol, not enough sleep, pretty poor nutrition, a lot of excitement and activity, because remember that excitement can be just as stressful as some negative emotions can be. There's a lot to be said for emotional calm. So everything goes along tickety-boo, and then something happens in your life and you end up with the same curve. So we had here, where on the previous one, that's what we wanted our activity hormones to be, and that's what we wanted our recovery hormones to be in 24 hours. But we said, that's not happening. It looks like more like that, and more like that. Yeah? That's what we said in 24 hours. So this is over a period of time. So when that situation takes over for quite a long period of time, you start to produce much more of the red pen, much more of the cortisol, and it goes up and up and up. Okay? Now, that might be a divorce. It might be changing jobs. It might be an illness. It might be anything. So we might put here divorce, illness. It might be backache. It might be, what else? It might be relationship issue. It might be education. It might just be poor diet. It might be dehydration. It might be all of those things. And because we never know whether somebody's stress reserve, whether their capacity to handle stress is like a thimble or whether it's a bucket, we never know how high that's going to go, and we don't know how long it's going to last. But we do know that if it doesn't stop, at some point it's going to start coming down again. Yeah? And at some point you will have run this system so hard that you are now writing checks that your body can't cash. It's too tired. There hasn't been enough recovery for it to cope, and it's run out of its reserves. So the level of stressor hormone is now dropping throughout the day. Okay? And it will keep on going until it plateaus out along here. Now, all of these issues created the stress that went up over a period of time, or a combination of these issues, whatever is unique to the individual. Here in Hull, We had some floods a few years ago, and when I've drawn this graph for a lot of my clients when they're sitting on my sofa, a lot of them will write the floods, because the whole ground floor of their house was flooded up until about 2 feet deep of water, completely ruined, desperately stressful. All the insurance companies took forever to sort stuff out. It was a really, really difficult time for a lot of the people in Hull, and so in that time there'll be the floods, and it will of course relationship problems, and it will of course financial problems, and there's a lot of mould about. It will have affected their health. They won't have eaten very well, so you can see how all these stressful things lead it to come up. And you get to a point, as I say, where your body is just writing checks, your mind is writing checks. The stressor side is writing checks that your body can't cash. And your ability to produce cortisol, this stressor hormone, your ability to meet the stressful demands starts to taper off. So what tends to happen down on this other side is two things. One is we start to self-medicate. So here we might increase sugar. We might increase alcohol. We might take some other kind of drugs to get us going. We might use exercise. Although that's going to get pretty painful, because whenever you burn off that much energy, you really want to put some back in the tank. And as you can see, we're not putting it back in the tank. Now, what else is going to happen as you come down there is symptoms are going to start cropping up. So this might be digestive problems. It might be elimination. You know how you get bunged up when you get stressed and you're not, you change the environment, you don't go so regularly. Might be toxicity problems. Might be food intolerance. All those kinds of problems can crop up in the body. And as they are cropping up in the body, what's happening, because you've not been recovering very well, you've not been producing that DHEA, this green line up here has dropped down to this little bit. All the mechanisms in your body that cope with keeping you clean and keeping you healthy, they've kind of been switched off, and they've been left to go to rack and ruin, because the priority in the body is to produce stressor hormone, deal with the stress. So this is what we would call normal function. This is what we would call stage 1 adrenal fatigue. This bit here is stage 2. Stage 2 adrenal fatigue. And this bit here is stage 3 adrenal fatigue. Yeah? So by the time you get to stage 2 adrenal fatigue, you've probably been through a whole host of issues that have cropped up in your life. And your ability to produce energy is obviously diminished. So if you've got that ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia kind of complaint, if you're just waking up in the morning feeling tired all the time, this is probably why. In fact, adrenal fatigue, because it's the reason it's called adrenal fatigue, is because it's your adrenal glands that produce the cortisol. Your adrenal glands are just physically not capable of producing normal levels of energy, because at stage 3 you are below the normal levels that you should be in a day.